So hybrid golf clubs are supposed to be the dream answer for all those golfers who struggle with their long irons. But all too often, having bitten the bullet and bought the hybrid, they get stood over the golf ball, make a swing, and just cold top it, fat it, slice it, and don't really get the results that they think that this magic club is supposed to produce. Now, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there's no such thing as a magic club. So first and foremost, what is a hybrid? So it's a cross between a wood and an iron, and the idea being that the bigger head with the hybrid than the iron is going to promote launching the ball up in the air, hit the ball a bit higher, and just generally be a bit more forgiving than an iron would be. But because golfers have it in their heads that it's a cross between a wood and an iron, they kind of get a little bit confused as to how they're supposed to set up with the hybrid and how they're supposed to swing the club to deliver it to hit the good shots. Because ultimately all we want is to be able to stand up there, have something to focus on, and hit a good solid strike, nice and high, fairly accurate, and a good distance that would replace that long iron. So I've got a 3 hybrid in the bag there. Replacement for a 3 iron for me it would be, and there's no way I would hit 3 iron nearly 100 foot high like I did that one, carry 210 and only roll out 225. Now I'm not expecting your numbers to be that. So what are the first mistakes I see golfers make with hybrid? Well, because it's a fairway wood, they talk about putting that golf ball really forward in the stance so they can kind of sweep the ball away. You know, and they know that the club doesn't want to be moving excessively down or up, but fairly level through the bottom. And the first problem for that is because the ball's too far forward and they've got a misunderstanding, very often, even on the good strike, that one's a little bit thin, almost topped. The low point was 0.9 inches behind the ball. The club's travelled up just under a degree, so the ball's just not got off the ground. The club's bottomed out here, missed the ground, and come up and topped it. So the first thing you need to do is change that mindset. Is the golf club needs to be moving down through the golf ball so that we hit ball and then ground. So we need to control the low point in our golf swing. And we need to make sure that that low point is ahead of the golf ball. So whenever I've got someone in front of me that's struggling with hybrid, the first thing I would say is, which are the clubs that, in theory, you would hit down most with? And with that little bit of understanding, they'll say, well, 7 iron down to my kind of pitching wedge, sand wedge, and the ball will be in the middle of my stance. So I say, right, let's first of all, let's make sure that the ball's in the middle, even if this isn't the perfect shot, and let's make sure we're trying to touch the ground, target side of the ball. So very often, we'll have a couple of practice swings and set up level with the ball so you can see where you're touching the ground. So I definitely touch the ground up here. Touching the ground isn't the low point. The deepest part of the divot will be the low point. So my low point might have been even 5-6 inches ahead there, but I'd definitely got a better contact with the ball. So once we've done a few practice swings, we set up to the golf ball, try and focus on touching that floor ahead. And straight away with every golfer, you see a much better connection. Higher up the club face, low point ahead, clubs moving down, better height and good distance. Now, I fully appreciate when you're practicing and playing, you don't get the level of feedback I'm giving you here with TrackMan. But I want you to understand kind of exactly what's happening, not what you think might be happening, but exactly what is happening in order to deliver that club better, to use a better part of the face, and actually start taking advantage of the reason why you've put hybrid in the golf bag. So I would, having done a good one like that, I would never say a sample size of 1 guarantees that we're bang on. So again, I'd get the ball in the middle of the stance, set up, really focus on being ahead. And even though that one's turned over a fraction more, we can see the low point still 2.3 inches ahead, clubs travel down 3 degrees, height's still great, and distance is still very, very good. Now, obviously with my club head speed, that ball still gets out to that nice height. But let's say you start striking it well and the flight's a little bit on the low side still, and it's maybe not doing what it should say on the tin. We might say that I don't want the club travelling down quite as much into impact and de-lofting the golf club. So I've been pretty consistent there at kind of 2 to 2.5 inches ahead of the golf ball. So if I wanted the club to travel a bit shallower but still down, instead of being right in the middle of my stance, I would then move the ball maybe an inch further forward. And again, just focus on trying to get that low point ahead, and that should give me a bit more loft and a bit more height. Now I can see there, saying 1/2 inch ahead. Definitely felt like I caught the mat a little bit early there, but very, very accurate, very, very high, and a decent distance for a bad one. Now, even though my low point was ahead there, and this is important to understand that, even though my low point was ahead of the golf ball, I definitely felt that I just went into the mat and continued down ahead, and that strike was much, much higher off the face. So even for me there, an inch ahead feels a little bit too far forward for me. So I'm going to go in the middle, just very slightly ahead, and again, focus on, as I get to the top of my backswing, moving across to get that low point ahead of the golf ball. And then I can trust the length of the shaft and the loft of the club to do the work. I can put a swing like that on it. See, nearly an inch ahead, not flushed out the middle, but club moving down, but nice and shallow. A lovely high flight, great carry at nearly 213 and total at 228. Now, I'll be honest, I've never personally been a massive fan of hybrids. I've always tended to kind of stick with the longer irons, or nowadays I've actually put more of a lofted fairway wood as a 7 wood in my bag. And predominantly because the lie angle, that angle there to there, makes the club face look a little bit left. So if you're a fader of the golf ball, a hybrid can be very beneficial to that. Not just hitting it higher, but helping you keep it straight. For anyone who draws the golf ball, not all hybrids are beneficial. But if I'm being honest, if I hit hybrid like that, I'd definitely consider putting it in the bag more often. So let's just make sure that wasn't a lucky one. We're going to get that ball slightly forward of centre. Really focus on just delivering this exactly like I would, like a mid-iron, even a short iron. That's more of what I tend to see with the hybrid. Just turning over a little bit too much. But again, low point's fantastic, clubs travel down, height's very good, and the total and the carry distances are bang on. It's just a little bit to the side. But remember, hybrid clubs, don't just buy off the shelf. If you can get fitted, and make sure that the club's going to do what you think it should do. If it doesn't, you can change around on lofts or even the lie angles on some of the clubs. But hybrid golf clubs, they might be a cross between an iron and a wood, but treat them much more like an iron. And if you have had issues in the past, they will now be a thing of the past.